Welcome to this week's Fireside Chat with Jesse. I am joined today by Andrew Cotter, EVP and Chief Information Officer at Somerset Capital. Thanks for joining me, Andrew.
Thank you, Jesse, for having me.
Hey, no problem. I'm glad I got the right I correct in that, and the reshoot that. So,
information, yes, lots of it.
Well, excellent, Andrew. I appreciate having you on here, man. And if you could just do me a favor and introduce yourself and your career to date in equipment finance.
Sure. So I have been with Somerset since 2002. Nice career. Joined them when they were pretty small. Prior to that, I was doing some consulting in technology. Joined them, and it's been a fun ride over the past 21 years now, I guess, and have seen the company grow. Have been able to build, influence, shape the organization, and be a part of that growth over all these years.
That's pretty admirable. I was going to say, I graduated college in 2003, and I think I'm on my fifth stint.
Yeah, I get the when I say I've been in a company for 20 years, a lot of people look at me like, is that possible these days? And it is. It's a great to reflect back and see all the people that have been a part of that are still a part of Somerset, people that have passed through in various parts of it over time. And I know we're going to talk later about the industry in general. Just the folks I've met along the way have been great.
Sure. And then, I guess while we're just talking about this, I didn't know you were a technology consultant before. Granted, you were younger, right? Yes. We all were 21 years ago. And what was it like going to be a consultant to then working for an organization? How did that work? Were you so great at the job that you're potentially hired for, where they were like, hey, we want you here?
It's having a lot of customers, a lot of clients at that point in various verticals, and just trying to make a living and go in a lot of different directions. Somerset was one of those, and they were at the point where they needed some full-time staff and needed some assistance. And I was at that point in my life going, a steady full-time job at one organization is not a bad thing. So health insurance would be nice. So it was a good pivot at the time, and I never thought back then that it would be this duration. It was just the next step in life. 20 years later plus, it was the right choice.
Then you have this guy 18 years into his equipment finance career decides to take the opposite role and say, no, I'm going to go on my own.
Yeah, it is. I kind of did it backwards, didn't I? Started consulting and then flipped it around. But
people don't take me serious now, let alone Jesse of 18 years ago. So it just is what it is. Do you mind just kind of introducing Somerset Capital?
Yeah, Somerset is an independent lessor. And while we are a lot like other leasing companies out there, we mostly do operating leases, which is a little bit different with a lot of organizations. The interesting component of Somerset that really differentiates us is having this equipment trading business, is use equipment around a lot of our verticals. And we've got physical warehouses, buying and selling goods, dealing with their off-lease gear. And I think that adds a whole different dynamic to my job, especially. It's not just the financial aspect, it's the warehousing, management, sales, purchasing, all those sorts of things. So it keeps my job interesting, and having really two drastically different lines of business keep me engaged and keep me busy. Like a lot, we don't do a lot of planes, trains, and automobiles, but we do a lot of other things like a lot of organizations do. So it's a great mix of equipment, great group to work for, and it's really been an interesting ride to this point.
You guys are headquartered in Connecticut?
Headquartered in Milford, Connecticut. Yep.
And
offices all over. We've got warehouses in different parts, nooks and crannies. We do some business internationally, which also puts another dynamic onto things. A little bit some Asian business, a little bit in the UK, mostly just UK, not other European, and then Canada. So there's always Canada.
So Canada, yeah. It's what's interesting is I travel a lot, and then I sit there and follow you, and I'm like, wow, I think you might travel even more than I do. Visit all these warehouses.
Yeah, it's interesting to keep them going and seeing what their needs are, working with their systems. And again, it is a drastically different piece to the equipment finance space. Dealing with racking and forklifts and IT stuff and semiconductor, it's a fun thing to go, have that extra mind shift to go, how do we help these folks at a physical warehouse, moving goods, buying and selling, optimizing, operations on that level, not just on the finance and moving paper around and data around.
So I guess that goes into my next topic of conversation, where I was want to talk about technology. And you mentioned warehousing, all these POS systems, and all these inventory management. Like, how is that stuff like constantly shifting? I mean, there's people in equipment finance who thinks that e-signature is the greatest thing. That's been going on forever. So
it is the greatest thing 10 years ago. And pandemic pushed it over the edge, I think, for a lot of people. And we saw significant adoption with our customers and our finance partners and stuff too. And it took, unfortunately, that sort of event to make that happen. Is it revolutionary? No. I mean, technology is ever evolving. There's always something new. There's always the next thing. What actually helps an organization, what actually creates value for an organization, keeps an organization safe. There are a whole new generation of things coming out now that we're all sort of seeing. It's in the news. If you don't have a conversation around technology and talk about AI these days, I don't know what kind of conversation you're not having, whether it's security, document generation, ideation, marketing, whatever it may be. AI is sort of embedded in it. The whole Chat GPT thing is coming out. How organizations are using that to write contracts. I mean, it really is going to change a lot of how we work and function. And if you're not exploring that in your jobs, chances are it might take your job, or understanding how it's going to help you, really empower you to do stuff. And there's plenty of use cases for it out there, but it's at its infancy. So it's, we could talk a while about AI and Chat GPT stuff. I mean, give me 5 hours and we could have fun with it. But that alone, let alone, we used to have those conversations about systems and integrations, the composable architecture of any sort of system of an organization. All those things are there, and they're important. Security is important. Data is important. This whole AI thing is going to change things drastically over the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, it's from a Chat GPT's perspective, right? When someone showed it to me, and I was kind of like, isn't there any original thought anymore? Like, you literally can tell this thing anything and it spits it out in some kind of, decent format. But what I've found is, like, to understand it and then use it to complement what I do on a daily basis, it just makes it more efficient. A little scary, though. A little scary. You can
use it for good, you can use it for bad. I mean, it is being that AI stuff is being used for, finding ways to craft better phishing emails or going after targets in a more, so the whole security side of things, there's this, I talk about this arms race of AI, right? This is happening. You get Microsoft and ChatGPT, you get the Bard, you got Google doing their thing and Facebook trying to do stuff. So you got these really big players out there that are trying to jump on this game and throwing massive amounts of money at it, compute at it, resources, training. The amount of data that has to go into training these things is obscene. How much data is actually involved in making these things work. I don't have that much data. Most of our organizations in equipment finance don't have that much data. So you have to have that training outside, but then we start applying our data to it, and you can do some pretty powerful things with it. But it can also be used in not so very good ways. I mean, there's a bunch of examples out there that are almost humorous and getting people into trouble, let alone, criminals trying to use it for their pillaging of systems and data and whatever else.
I didn't even think about that. I guess that's just not where my mind's trained. For me, it's more of I like the way this sentence, I think I like it, but can you please make it suck less?
in a couple of years, it's gotten much better in how it produces things, and it's not just text. it's images. I mean, all that sort of creation of imagery is getting much better too, and the deep fake world of things. AI's got a lot of use cases, and there's a lot going on right now around. Should there be legislation? Should all these companies are signing on saying, should there be a 6-month hold? Well, my problem is with that, and a number of people have said it, is if we shut down innovation for 6 months in the US, what are other countries going to do? And they're going to get ahead. They're going to win the arms race. And we can't afford that. So I think there needs to be some guardrails at some point, and we need to be careful. People are always going to find interesting ways to use technology for good and bad. Hopefully we can fight the bad stuff with the good. But my point of view is we can't shut this down and just not allow innovation. You can't stop innovation. People will work themselves around it anyway. So that's you can't fight it.
Nah, you got to embrace it. I mean, you don't have to fully embrace it. You can do a half hug around it and then understand it. And then,
yeah, I mean, there's, throwing it like into your operations and allowing it to create documents without reading it or checking it, or in your chat bot or something, like, yeah, that's going to cause some problems, especially with some of the stuff that comes out of them sometimes. That's
what did I was reading something the other day that I was like, hey, just can you throw this idea about me? And I was like Borat wrote it, and I was like, this is pretty entertaining.
It's entertaining. It's amazing what it comes up with. There's even one person I just heard about last night, that he essentially had an AI write an entire novel and then had another system read it. So it's an audio book, but it was written by an AI. So if you talk about creative content, now we as humans today are sort of training it and asking it to do certain things, but now your creativity is totally outsourced to a machine. And
and then it's like, and make this a New York Times bestseller. see where it runs. All right. Anyhow, yeah. I mean, there's so many things. I mean, I think of from a automation perspective, if there's just the repeatable tasks, like entering credit applications or entering data, I see that being some low-hanging fruit that can be automated.
Yeah, the automation, the marketing, I think it's really got a significant reason to use it. I think around security, there's a lot of good reasons to use some of this AI stuff to detect and credit applications, any sort of fraud detection, great use cases for it. Is it in a chat bot? I'm not sure I'd release it to your customers quite yet, but it works. Ideation, plenty of people have used it for just getting the juices flowing. What do I want to talk about? What can I talk about? I'm running out of ideas. I need to brainstorm about stuff. Great use case for it. I think in the coding world, some coders probably should be a little threatened, or if they're not using it, they should. It actually can write code. I mean, it can write application logic and code if you ask it to. So it's an interesting evolution. If it's not, people aren't, and developers aren't using it today, they're going to get behind.
Can it build the lease accounting platform?
Probably little by little.
Ask him for a friend.
Might take some time and a lot of good questions, but I mean, if you ask the right question, the thing spits out a whole bunch of stuff.
Sorry, I'm a child and can't help myself. But shifting gears a little bit, mentioning the travel, the different locations that you're at. I know as a father, what that does to my personal life and not being able to be there. So from a work-life balance with 2 kids at home, and a wife, what does kind of that do, Andrew? And how do you?
Yeah, so I've got one in college.
Any best practices you can share?
One in college, one in high school. Being a little bit older as they are now, it becomes a little bit easier, especially when the oldest is back at school. It's becomes a little easier just to touch base, because maybe they don't actually want to reach out. They're busy doing their college stuff, right? Being available, being around, engaging with them when they were little. It was hard. It was hard to be walking out the door and not seeing them for a couple of days on a repeat basis. Watching them grow up, though, spending as much time with them is great. Connecting with, technology like this, if they can figure out how to do FaceTime, Zoom, whatever, that works. having some connection with them on a daily, weekly basis, and not just say, I'll see you in a month as I'm traveling the world, whatever it is. It's not the same as being in person, but it is catching those 5 minutes, 10 minutes with them at breakfast, driving to school, going to practices when I'm around, being involved in their lives as much as possible. At this point, with my oldest, he's studying in the STEM world in physics, and
that's awesome.
That's an interesting thing. So me trying to learn some of the physics and recall some of the math and stuff from college, and going, this hurts my brain to think about some of these things still.
It's like the Billy Madison answer.
just trying to find things to relate, right? I mean, just to connect, going, I kind of get what you're talking about, or here's an interesting article. I don't really know what they're talking about, but here, let me share this with you and have a conversation when I can. So
hello, Chat GBT, give me some cliff notes on this thing.
Please explain this really complex topic to me about astrophysics. Yes, I don't understand.
Thank you, AI.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's great to watch them grow up and change and become who they are. And my daughter is involved in theater, and just being able to be around when I can and help out in the building of the sets and stuff like that. And which I love doing those kinds of things, hands-on building stuff and helping create and be supportive in that way, in whatever direction that they're chasing down their careers and their life and their interests.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Yeah, I mean, for me, it's just kind of maximizing the time that you actually do get. You just never know when you're going to be on that next plane sometimes. It's just the way this works.
Just look at the calendar. It's on there somewhere.
It's on there somewhere. And if it's not, it was on there, and they deleted it, not me. Not my fault. I want to say that I can't remember probably the last time you and I met. I'm assuming it was probably at an LTI user conference, probably when I was with OSG, or sometime even when I was at OSG. And, wanted to talk about, the equipment finance industry, going to these conferences, whether if it's a user group or an ELFA or NEFA conference, and kind of like what those associations mean to you and what those relationships, Andrew, and leasing mean.
I mean, from an association standpoint, having an industry association that's there to promote leasing and lobby and stuff like that, that's great. That's not an area that I'm an expert. I'm not in Washington pounding on people's doors. Having the connections with folks and building relationships, like, meeting you and hanging out with you after all these years, and just, dozens and hundreds of other people in the industry. It's where you build bonds. And that's one thing I really enjoy about this industry is, while we are fighting for deals, we are buying and selling, we are partners on one hand, we're competitors in another, and just the camaraderie between organizations in this industry is fascinating. Where in some other industries, it's not quite like that. And I spent a fair amount of time outside of equipment finance with other more broad-based technology organizations. And you don't necessarily always get that. There's a lot of like hiding of secrets, or not necessarily willing to open up about an experience or an opportunity. I mean, just some of the conferences that I've had the fortunate chance to be a part of, like the planning session for Ops and Tech for all these years, chairing that for a couple of years, and the awards and all that sort of stuff that goes with that. It's been great to work with other folks that are peers in the industry to come up with content, share that with people, have conversations, make those connections, and then walk away going, the next day we may be, out trying to outbid you in something, or working with a service provider, or not working with a service provider on something. So relationship wise, networking wise, is one thing I've been trying to teach my kids too, is that networking component is huge, and it might lead to the next job. It might lead to the next volunteer position. It might lead to the next hobby, whatever it may be, but you make those connections that not are only for work, but there's friendships involved in that too. And I think that's sort of, we spend so much time at work, and these days at work looks a lot different than it used to. But what are those connections? How are we connected to individuals? And what does that mean for us as people, as humans, that are spending so much time doing this? You can't just work the whole time, right? You got to have fun. You got to laugh. You got to share a little bit of life with people. And you get to know folks pretty deeply over time by doing that. And that's meaningful. It's not just a transaction. It's not just a deal. It's a person. It's a relationship. It's fun. It's friendship. It's laughing with them. It's getting on stuff like this and just sharing where you're at in your career and what's going on. It's a good thing to do. That networking stuff is so crucial these days.
I 100% agree with everything there. I mean, it's I believe the word is frempetition. Is it frempetition?
Repetition.
Where it's like, yeah.
I've not heard repetition before.
No, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, frompetition. I don't know. There's some other word, but I think you know where I'm going with that. Where you can sit there and, like you said, I just lost a deal off a couple basis points. Why'd you go that low? And you're like yelling at each other over a drink, but you're like, haha, okay, I'll get you on the next one.
Yep. Yeah.
But then again, if there's a challenge that people are having, you know, competitors sit down and they figure out where it's like, hey, how do we overcome this? And like, to your point, that doesn't really happen in other industries.
Yeah, the willingness to share is huge, and I'm seeing it even earlier today, talking with someone that's in preparing for a presentation at the Ops and Tech this year around an organization that's willing to be pretty vulnerable in what happened. Come to the Ops and Tech conference to see it, but it's really just interesting to see someone who really wants to educate and help out the community, the industry grow and learn from a mistake or something that went on. And a lot of companies would hide that, wouldn't share it, wouldn't want to be that vulnerable.
Well, I guess why you brought up the Ops and Tech conference. So this will be released in June. So what do we have? 3 months before the next one?
September 11th starts. Yeah.
I don't know about the date, but let's do a little teaser for it if you don't mind. What can that was my first ever conference. Ops and Tech. It was great. I used to be on the committee when I was at OSG and enjoyed being on there with you. It's been a while, but why should people go who haven't been, and people that are going, what can they expect?
Yeah, it's a great conference, I think, for operations and technology. It's a good mix. Over the years, it's evolved a bunch in having some technical pieces for those folks, also having an operational and building into people. There's usually always a component of taking the individual and making them better. It's not all about just work. It's about the person, right? And how do we do that? So it's a couple days of getting together, having some topics, some fun vendor lightning rounds that I threw in there a few years ago. We tend to toss those in. There's always the award for the industry on innovation, which is great to be a part of that. You get to see what people are doing to innovate in their organizations. And talk with them about that. And there's, each year there's a great submissions on the award level. And it's hard to decide. We as a committee, when I've done it, it's been a difficult thing to determine who the winner is sometimes. But it's a good 2.5 days pre-conference this year. Is going to be on a cybersecurity fraud breach that happened, and the CEO is going to share. So we get to talk and sort of talk about the anatomy of the breach and what to do and how to protect yourself and what they are dealing with and are dealing. But then obviously the rest of the conference goes on. So good smattering, fast pace, not a slow conference by any means. Some of our sessions are only about half hour to an hour. At the same time, the Lease Accounting Conference is in New Orleans. So hey, it's New Orleans. Come see New Orleans. Stop on Bourbon Street in the way, grab some beads, and who knows what else will happen.
And if you don't get selected for the Ops and Tech Award, you know who to blame.
I abstain.
I am part of only a committee of people. It's not just my sole decision.
There is definitely it takes a committee to decide. Absolutely.
It's fantastic. So Andrew, I ask everyone who comes on here to give me a little fun fact about themselves. So anything you'd like to discuss?
Yeah, so my go-to has always been that an early job for me was actually a parasail driver. So a parasail boat driver. That was a couple summers doing that. It's a little odd thing, a little bit of great job. It was fun for a summer to be out in the water and flying people up in the air and, having a great time. I guess, I don't know if that evolved, but then, pre-pandemic, I got the urge to drive Uber, so then I was driving Uber for about 1.5 years, 2 years on and off. Late at night, I would just go out and drive, mostly college kids, and plenty of good stories came out of that one. It was great. It was fun. I enjoyed it. Driving people. I felt like you should be in cash cab or something and like asking them questions, the conversations, the things that people will say in the car, and the odd situations you find yourself at where you're picking people up from sometimes, made for some amusing stories.
Are you at liberty to share the most awkward situation that you were in?
This is recorded. I probably can't say some of the things that, I mean, yes, there's a lot of stories. Anyone who would like to,
at a high level.
I mean, it was a lot of college kids picking up from parties, and
there was a meth lab. Then we stopped by a bank. They put on a hood. Then we had to drive real fast.
I was never involved in a bank robbery or anything illegal that I'm aware of. So plead the fifth on that one. I was not I did actually ask that question if I was the getaway car one time when I had 3 guys in my car in the back seat picking them up from a party, and there were cops there. So
good timing. You were good timing. That's what you were.
Well, I was their getaway, but they weren't the cause of the police being there, as I asked them a few questions. Before I pulled away, I'm not being chased by cops down the street because I've got the the cause of the 911 call.
They run your plates. You're like, this is a family guy. He's an executive at a company. What is going on?
Yeah, it was interesting. I'd say I tried a couple times and threw in the Uber Eats thing. Never do that. That was a horrible experience. Nothing against Uber Eats as a consumer. Love it. It's great. But delivery at 2 a.m. with a pizza, not a good idea.
No, at that point, I'm going to go home. What happened? I don't know. Attempted delivery. You didn't answer.
Oh, they were there and they were mad that I rang the doorbell and all the lights were on. I didn't understand. I didn't get it. It's just odd things, nothing good happens after 2 a.m., right? Is it the whole thing? And I was delivering a pizza.
I think it's after midnight for me. Like the gremlin thing, right? Don't feed them after midnight.
Whatever you do, don't feed them after midnight. Yeah.
My last question I have for you is, at the end of the day, why should companies want to do business with Somerset Capital?
I think a lot of companies say a lot of the same things when you say, what's your marketing pitch? I think one of the things I value about Somerset, can you hear that?
Mm-mm.
You can't hear that. Okay, good. Because you may have to ask that question again, because there's a guy with a weed whacker right outside my window right now.
No, I can't. I have no.
Okay,
no, I can't. I'll ask you that again. No worries. So Andrew, my final question is, at the end of the day, why do business with Somerset Capital?
Yeah, one of the things I think I've really admired about Somerset and have learned more and more over the years is the values that they have. We as an organization, the honesty with deals. I've heard time and time again of leasing companies that maybe aren't as forthright in some of their terms and how they treat their customers. I really appreciate our approach to our customers and how we work with them and being as fair and honest, and it's got to be good for both of us, the customer and the leasing company, for us in Somerset, to make it a valuable relationship. I know we all talk about relationships and those are the valuable thing. That is really a core value of Somerset in being honest and being upfront and making things right when we have issues. And issues always come up. Not hiding things, not sliding things under the table or trying to do stuff without people being aware. So really appreciate it about Somerset. Really nice family sort of feel to it. Great folks to work with.
Well, excellent. Thank you for that. Appreciate your time today and look forward to seeing you. I don't think it'll probably be 3 months. I'm sure we'll be running into each other beforehand. But if not, I look forward to seeing you at the Ops and Tech Conference in New Orleans, man.
Yeah, be at Ops and Tech and hopefully before. Thanks for having me on. And, I appreciate the opportunity to be on here.
All right. Thank you, Andrew. Have a good day, man.
Thanks. Take care.